There's something secret going on in the cities of Los Angeles and Philadelphia that they aren't telling us about. And no, I'm not talking about who has the best cheesesteaks or how to fly out of LAX without having a mental breakdown. It's the rise of the quirky, animal named hipster neighborhoods. It's an interesting turn of events that highlight some of the benefits, yes, benefits of certain forms of gentrification. That might be a controversial statement, so stick with me here. I'll start with the neighborhood of Fishtown. Right off the bat, the name sticks out as quite peculiar for a place. It's a neighborhood located just northeast of downtown Philadelphia and derives its name from one of the original occupations of its residents. Early settlers in the area were fishermen, as the neighborhood is located on the Delaware River. The neighborhood has been working class for centuries, and while poverty grew after jobs left during the deindustrialization era, which affected many Rust Belt cities, Fishtown's workers continued to maintain a stable working class community. Following the industrial boom and eventual slowdown, much of the neighborhood became abandoned, decrepit, and frankly unsafe, coupled with the fact that the neighborhood borders that of Kensington, a place infamous for its open-air drug markets and just general blight, and well, Fishtown was not always what it is today. And it wasn't until 2005 when Fishtown experienced moderate gentrification characterized by significant rises in housing prices and the opening of upscale art, entertainment, and dining establishments. And since then, an influx of artists and professionals have joined the ranks of police officers, firefighters, sheet metal workers, and teamsters. As of 2023, the neighborhood had one of the highest incomes in Philadelphia. And today, significant gentrification has caused this once dangerous and low-income area that locals normally steered clear of into one of, if not the most desirable neighborhood for young professionals moving into the city. It's still very much a work in progress though, and strolling down Frankfurt Avenue, you can't help but to appreciate what the neighborhood is developing into. A more modern take on row homes, except this time with shops, cafes, workout classes, creative studios, and offices, and some of the best ice cream you'll ever have filling the bottom floors. And this seems like just the beginning for Fishtown. There's just so much new construction all at once. You could tell the city really wants Fishtown to become successful, because it could be a money-making machine for them. And for Philadelphians, and even those moving to the city from elsewhere, the neighborhood offers an incredible sense of community, with numerous parks, breweries, coffee shops, and other third places in general. It's much of the same story over in the neighborhood of Frogtown too. Now, Frogtown is a neighborhood just on the other side of Dodger Stadium from downtown LA. Sometime between the 1930s and the 1960s, the neighborhood became known as Frogtown when swarms of western toads invaded the streets. In 1962, the Golden State Freeway removed a section of the western flank of Frogtown, isolating it from nearby neighborhoods. The shape of the neighborhood in itself is a geographical oddity, with long roads, mostly without crossroads, other than the Ripple Street Thoroughway. From the 1980s to the early 2000s, Frogtown, like Fishtown, wasn't exactly known for being the safest part of town. In fact, Frogtown was highly unsafe, with gang-related criminal activity rampant, with residents often reporting going to sleep to the sound of gunfire. It was the height of the LA gang violence, and Frogtown was home to some of the worst of it. However, it was always ideally close to massive artist neighborhoods and communities, such as Elysian Heights, Silver Lake, and Echo Park. This attracted many out-of-town artists to the area throughout the 80s and 90s, and by the early 2000s into the 2010s, acclaimed artists and designers had studios in the neighborhood. This burgeoning artist community continued to expand, and in the present day, Frogtown looks a lot different than it used to. It's less dangerous, more walkable with the addition of the LA River Greenway Trail. Small businesses have begun to pop up alongside some dense housing options. The urban fabric is expanding slowly, and the future of Frogtown looks much brighter than it did 30 years ago. So how is Fishtown any different from any other up-and-coming gentrified neighborhood? Well, it's not so much different as it is unique, for a couple of reasons. One of the most unique parts of a place like Fishtown and Frogtown is the street art. Wherever you look, you'll see street art and or murals decorating the exposed walls of buildings here. Now, murals aren't unique. A lot of great neighborhoods have them. But for Fishtown in particular, it's almost a way of marketing itself. The tongue-in-cheek references to its name with these art pieces let visitors and prospective dwellers of the neighborhood know that, hey, we're self-aware. We know our name is a little bit weird, and so are we. And if you're a little weird too, you're in the right place. Another superpower that Fishtown and Frogtown have is their ability to bring the community into atypical spaces. After-hours comedy shows, trivia nights, and flea markets are abundant in Fishtown and Frogtown. On any given day, particularly in the summer months, you'll be able to find a way to interact with your fellow neighbors within the urban environment. The community feel of these places is very strong. They're doing their own thing with respect to their cities as a whole, and people are really attracted to the uniqueness of places like Fishtown and Frogtown, especially creatives. They're very conducive to creativity and community, which, in my opinion, go hand in hand. So, are Fishtown and Frogtown gentrified neighborhoods? Well, gentrification is defined as the process whereby a character of a poor urban area is changed by wealthier people moving in, improving housing, and attracting new business, typically displacing current inhabitants in the process. A secondary definition is the process of making something more refined, polite, or respectable. And by those standards, yes, Frogtown and Fishtown are gentrified neighborhoods, but people always talk about how gentrification is a dangerous concept and only harms the existing area by forcing people out in chains and shackles. But in most cases, that is extremely over-exaggerated and certainly missing context. In the case of Frogtown, who exactly is being pushed out? A community that made Frogtown unsafe and undesirable to begin with? A community where kids are used to going to sleep to the sound of gunfire and gang activity? A community with no community. I picked Frogtown and Fishtown to talk about today not solely because of their unique names and similar stories, but because they're both examples of the gentrification no one ever wants to talk about. The kind that makes a place safer for everyone. A kind that made Frogtown go from a place where you wouldn't walk outside at night past 9 p.m. to a place home to some of LA's best wine bars, pottery studios, coffee shops, community gardens, parks, and bakeries. The kind that turned Fishtown from crumbling old abandoned buildings to an urbanist paradise full of new construction, dense infill, multi-use development, and so much more. Try not to let the G word scare you so much. Fishtown and Frogtown are two of the most desirable places to live in Philly and Los Angeles, respectively, and that's a good thing. Many of the quote-unquote natives who some claim are being pushed out are getting millions of dollars for their properties in both cities, and that's if they choose to sell and move out. And of course, they don't have to do that. And why would they want to now? These neighborhoods are so much safer than they were when they inherited them. I live in the Los Angeles area and I frequent Frogtown, most often in the summer and fall months when the neighborhood holds its Frogtown Flea Crawl, a place for Angelinos to walk the LA River Greenway Trail while checking out some local art, clothing vendors, coffee shops, and so much more, all while outside enjoying the Southern California sun. The neighborhood is also home to some great micro parks, public art displays, and even a small live music venue. It's a delightful, low-key, little-known neighborhood that contributes another thread in the urban fabric that makes Los Angeles sometimes very desirable, especially among the artistically inclined. I also recently visited Philadelphia in May of 2024 and found Fishtown quite a bit more developed and better planned than Frogtown as far as city planning goes. I mean, there's not much construction going on in Frogtown outside of a few new apartment buildings popping up here and there. It's a slow process, as is everything out here on the West Coast, but as for Fishtown, like I mentioned earlier in the video, it's developing rapidly, and its urban fabric is some of the best you'll find in an American neighborhood, even in its contemporary form. The neighborhood is old and switches from paved to cobble streets, harkening back to a time when the neighborhood was actually just a fishing village hundreds of years ago. The way the neighborhood managed to slip in communal spaces, such as parks and squares, and blends them in so seamlessly with the surrounding retail and residential spaces is quite aesthetically pleasing. It's just a peaceful place, home to countless amounts of amenities in the form of workout studios, bakeries, breweries, organic markets, and everything in between. It's also home to stops on Philadelphia's light rail and metro rail lines. It's easy to live here without a car, not something you can say for many places in the US. Okay, prepare yourself, I'm about to use the G word again. Frogtown and Fishtown are, without a shadow of doubt, examples of positive gentrification. And if you didn't think that was possible before watching this video, and maybe are even still in doubt, I urge you to take a visit to one or both of these uniquely named places. What you find may just surprise you. I'll see you next week on 4th Place.